Jill Bialosky is author of the New York Times best-selling memoir, History of a Suicide, My Sister's Unfinished Life. 4 collections of poetry, The Player's Intruder, Subterranean, and The End of Desire, and 3 novels, The Prize, House Under the Snow, and The Life Room. She is co-editor with Helen Schulman of the anthology Wanting a Child. Her poems and essays appear in The New Yorker, O Magazine, Paris Review, The Nation, The New Republic, Kenyon Review, and American Poetry Review, among other publications. And she also has a memoir called Poetry Will Save Your Life. Now, anybody who's studied with me knows that I have a book about writing called How to Find, no, wait a minute, it's my own book and I now have forgotten the name. Writing Poetry to Save Your Life, How to Find the Courage to Tell Your Story. So I saw this, I thought, wait a minute, that's my title, and I realized it isn't quite my title. But anyway, so it was interesting to see the different thing that Jill did with that title from what I was trying to do with the writing book, and which is part writing book and part memoir. Anyway, I think in welcoming Jill here, I have to say that her poem, of course, obviously she can write in a lot of different genres. For me, always the poetry is the most important. And I feel that in her poems, she writes very elegant, very polished, very specific poems that really are exploring the life of a woman in the 21st century and 20th century. And I love that. I love the kind of intense focus these poems place on womanhood and motherhood, and maybe because it's been a big part of my life as well. But anyway, I'm pleased to welcome, and I hope I said your name correctly, Bialosky.
Yes, hello. I wanted to also thank Maria. You may not remember, but for my 3rd book of poetry, Intruder, it was a finalist for the Paterson Prize, and I was very happy about that. Of course, you are a legend in the poetry world.
Just don't tell them I couldn't stop.
Okay. Right. And it was really lovely to hear Joseph's poetry from Pittsburgh. I'm from Cleveland, so I thought I would start with a poem that is a ode to Cleveland, and it's an ode to a building. It's called Terminal Tower, and in Cleveland, the downtown, when I grew up, the Terminal Tower was the tallest building in Cleveland, and it was a terminal in the sense that there was a rapid transit that took you from the suburbs into downtown Cleveland. And so we would go there every year for the Christmas holidays. And anyway, and I was fascinated with the idea that the tower was called Terminal. It had such an eerie feeling. So this is an ode to the Terminal Tower. From the top of the tower, when the sun set in the Cuyahoga's brown waters, the river caught fire to make our city the laughingstock of a nation. It cast a dark shadow over the industrial sky. To the Van Sweringen brothers, it was like the Eiffel Tower of Paris, conceived in 1925 like a favorite child in a family. It foreshadowed Rockefeller Center and gave to our city the 2nd tallest building. To us, it was grand as Mount Olympus. It was the place we imagined Zeus and his cronies conducted their mortal business. There is a legend about a lost daughter and a mother who must bargain for her return. Weren't we all lost inside our dreams and imaginings? Didn't all of us who lived off the shores of Lake Erie want to be claimed? On an overcast day, you can still make out the intricate masonry of its patrician face. It was where the fathers of our community worked, riding the rapid transit from the safe suburbs through the poverty of the ghetto into the underbelly of downtown. When we looked from the ground to the top of the tower, we felt our spirits elevate. Then I heard it inside the crowds, the honking of automobiles and shriek of an ambulance, the singular cry, and he was there in all his omnipotence, and I knew my fate was locked inside the mortar of his mercurial facade, like wet leaves pressed into a mosaic on the pavement. In synagogue, we learned about Moses climbing the mount and God's deliverance of the commandments. Whether the sound came from a wounded gull or a school of dirty pigeons did not matter. Whether it was Zeus or God the Almighty or my vision of my lost father was irrelevant. It was the idea of being greater than myself I coveted. It was terminal, the longing. It was magnificent, a tower that did not look desolate in its setting, a structure to provide an anchor to the observer's glance, a relief from the flatness of the world around us. In the tower square, men clad in overcoats carrying briefcases trafficked the street, rode its 52 floors to politic, and it was at the very top where Zeus might have bargained with the prince of the underworld for his daughter's return. As I looked up the sweep of the tower's long elegance, I saw through a mass of smog that I might lose myself forever, or I might survive. I saw that he was looking after me, but that he was also indifferent. I saw that love was fickle and adulterous, and still I longed for him. I saw that he betrayed us and that he could not save me. I saw through the stone into the abyss. It was dark and splendid. Thank you. So now I would like to read some poems from my newest book, The Players, and I was talking to my students today about telling it slant, and I read them. So the idea behind The Players is that my son played baseball when he was growing up, and he was a very good baseball player. And he was on the tournament team where he would travel from place to place with this team. And it took up about 4 or 5 years of my life going to watch his games and meet people and to see sort of the life of a community. So in this book, I was somewhat thinking about community and family in terms of the baseball field. And so I wrote a long poem called Manhood, and it's in 13 sections. I'm not going to read all of them, but I read to my class the mothers, and so now I'm going to read the fathers. The fathers. While we waited in our cars, already gassed up, still dawn, no light, dark as a motherfucker, they got up late, slunk out of bed and into the shower, and took too long under the water. We waited for them to stumble out the door, crawl into the back, and stretch out, their hair still wet, and sleep again while we drove sometimes 2 hours to the field. When they woke, we gave them bacon and egg sandwiches. We wanted them to get stronger, meaner. We wanted their bodies to perform like well-oiled machines. We'd been there before. We worked, some of us at jobs we didn't like, in offices, in hospitals, in construction, to put food on the table and make the mortgage to send our boys to college. In our offices, we pushed aside documents to make out the roster. We evaluated their stance, what they needed to do to get underneath it, to throw farther, increase their speed, realize their potential. For years after dinner, weekends, we took them to the field and threw the ball, hit them grounders, brought them to the cages. When they hit the ball hard, stole home, executed a double play, we lived on it for days. Some nights when they were in a slump, our dreams were inchoate and thick. When they went up to bat, we saw if they partied too hard the night before. One of us had a boy gone soft for a girl and lost his focus. Others had boys who were loud and cocky or meandered to the plate with heads bowed as if they were living ghosts. We saw them when they were confident, when they lacked drive, were defeated. We paced, we rattled the fence, cursed. We scrutinized every play, unable to step back as if we were under a trance in some kind of white haze, as if we were Abraham under the instruction of a benevolent God, taking our son to the top of the mount to sacrifice his life for something better than his forbearer. Thank you. And I'll read you one more from this series. This is the girls. We talked about this also in the class today. The day the boy played us, it was not in our beds or in the back seat of a car or in a field on a blanket. They played us with the magnificence of their bodies. They did not know that when we watched them make a play with skill and grace, like chess masters advancing pieces on a board, silent guardians of their own sacred positions, they had us. Their bodies were like fortresses, their minds half-barred windows. They played us with intensity. They played us eager, and as they played us, we knew we were different. What we liked most was their strength, the throbbing muscles in their necks, the way their calloused hands gripped the bat, ready to bear down, ready to get some. They did not know it was enough to find us with their eyes across the field behind the gated fence when the air smelled of manure and rotting grass, when we did not yet know we wanted them. That one was fun to write. And then, see, I'm going to move outside of baseball to to daylight savings. There was the hour when, raging with fever, they thrashed, the hour when they called out in fright, the hour when they fell asleep against our bodies, the hour when without us they might die, the hour before school and the hour after, the hour when we buttered their toast and made them meals from the 4 important food groups. What else could we do to ensure they'd get strong and grow? There was the hour when we were spectators at a recital, baseball game, when they debuted in the school play. There was the silent hour in the car when they were angry, the hour when they broke curfew, the hour when we waited for the turn of the lock, knowing they were safe and we could finally close our eyes and sleep. The hour when they were hurt or betrayed and there was nothing we could do to ease the pain. There was the hour when we stood by their bedsides with ginger ale or juice until the fever broke. The hour when we lost our temper, and the hour we were filled with regret. The hour when we slapped their cheeks and held our hand in wonder. The hour when we wished for more. The hour when their tall and strong bodies, their newly formed curves and angles in their faces, and Adam's apple surprised us. Who had they become? Hours when we waited and waited, when we rushed home from the office or sat in their teacher's classroom, awaiting the report of where they stumbled and where they excelled. The hours when they were without us, the precious hour we did not want to lose each year, even if it meant another hour of daylight. Get some water here, excuse me. And I'll read one more poem from this book, and then I just wanted to read 2 new poems. So this is called Prophecy. This book, in a way, is almost an elegy to my son's childhood. I realized once I finished the book that my son was getting ready to go to college and leave for the first time. And I recognized, of course, that this book was all about me trying to make sense of that experience of letting go. And this poem is called Prophecy. We knew how it worked. Our precursors warned us. It would happen when they were teenagers. Still, we didn't believe it, not our boys. The first time we thought that they were under the influence of a drug or a conniving friend or girl, they looked right through us, no longer willing to abide. It was as if another being had taken over, scorching even their hair a deeper shade, stealing their voice. When we went to kiss them, their cheeks turned to stone, and when they looked at us, it was with disdain instead of adoration. The kinder and more loving we'd been meant we'd have it worse. It was as if they were suddenly warned of a prophecy that would bring tragedy and gloom if they did not turn away. It was as if they'd been deceived or deluded. It was as if they were Oedipus discovering he'd married his mother and took the pin from her dress, yes, her dress, and stabbed himself in the eye. We knew there was nothing we could do but ride it out, that for some it might take years of wandering and exile, of restraint and turmoil, until they'd finally come back as if to seek refuge in a grove of gentle trees. Thank you. So these last 2 poems are new poems, and they're really influenced by the change in our world, in our political moment. And this one is called They Came, and it's for the families of the deceased buried in Jewish cemeteries that were desecrated since January of 2017. They came with small rocks and pebbles to place on the holy ground where gravestones had been turned over and desecrated. They came with their relatives' plot numbers scribbled on scraps of paper. They came with tears in their eyes. They came with their memories and grief unfurling like the sails of a ship meeting the wind of the never-to-be-forgotten. They came to see what the destroyers had done, granite and marble slabs with the names and dates of the beloved toppled as if the gravestones were bodies with faces thrust into the mud. They came to see where there was blood on the stones from the hands of the destroyers. They came and they remembered the hieroglyphics of Hebrew, the red blossoms of shame. They came with fear in their eyes and horror in their throats. They came with the foreknowledge of evil dictators spewing caustic rhetoric, red swastikas on the navy sleeves of lieutenants, the sound of shrill whistles climbing wildflowers creeping up barbed wire, Jewish stars cut from the yellow fabric sewn over the hearts of tattered coats. They came to mourn the anniversary of the apocalypse, the sound of the nightingales, the scrolls unwinding. They came to never forget the possibility of extinction, the power of a regime, the cowering of a populace. They came and they remembered too the collapse of towers, the scouring of the pit, the terrible blue skies, the day in which the innocent were forsaken. It's kind of a dark one. And then this last poem I want to read is a somewhat of an allegory that I like to mix sometimes contemporary experiences with by creating a kind of myth or an allegory. And this poem I wrote after the recent election, and it was published in the New Yorker on April 3rd, and I've never had so many reactions to a poem. So I'll read it to you. It's called Hot Tub After Skiing, December 2016. We were cold, all day we were cold. We thought of bitter gods, hard not to think of gods so close to the heavens, and were frightened. The mountain is divided. On one side, the sun spilled its brilliance. The snow glistened. The aspen and birch trees stood tall, and tiny mountain chickadees chased one another in strange and compelling harmony. If there was terrorism in our midst, we did not know it. If there was an animal that threatened us, we did not sense it, though one of us saw a wolf lurking in the forest. All the birch trees wore different spots on their long and beautiful spines. What the small children liked to do most was slide down on their bums. All of us were in mourning. We the people, we with our inalienable rights. On the other side of the mountain, it is ungroomed and barren. A bald eagle flies overhead, searching for prey. There is no regard for order. Only the foolish come to perform their egotistical stunts. The clouds are disseminating, who knows what else. When the slopes close, we release our skis from their binding and trudge home, mere mortals, tired and spent. Our muscles ache. We undress, slip off our layers, and plunge into the hot tub. Hate has been unleashed, daughter number 1 says. Daughter number 2 says that we must withstand it because it's our turn now. But I don't like it. I want to understand. How did this happen? What can we do? Daughter number 3 says. Daughter number 2 considers this. Everything is changing. The mothers are quiet. This is their world now, we think. We don't want to intrude. Daughter number 3 says she's frightened. She wakes up in her sleep. What will we do in the face of the vile and vengeful? How will we live in a world without ethics? Why has the clock turned back instead of forward? It won't do. We fire up the hot tub. Steam rises, obscuring our faces. The air is frigid, but the water is hot, and our limbs are numb with the letting go. We watch the sun slowly descend into the mountain. Underneath the water, we can't tell whose legs are whose hand is touching ours, who is mother, daughter, who belongs to whom, when the uprising will begin. Everything is floating away from us against our will. The price of his glory is our suffering, daughter number 1 says. She's the vigilant one. The water gurgles against the throbbing of the jets. Thank you. Thank you.